When I was traveling in India, I saw one kind of yogi type of person. Like, he was in a cave, he was meditating. I looked at him, I thought, this guy is the real deal. Like, he looks like he has some wisdom. So I went up to him and I asked him, can you give me some wisdom that will help me on my spiritual journey? And he told me something which I try to follow even today. He said, every year, disconnect for 1 month. Every week, disconnect for 1 day. And every day, disconnect for 1 hour. And then he looked at me and he said, disconnect to connect. We've been given the topic, what is the purpose of life and how do we achieve it? It's a small topic. No, a very vast topic. A topic that's been discussed, which has been debated, which has been explored by generations of people and continues to be explored. Why are we here? How did we end up here in this world? What is the purpose of life? How can we find happiness? What happens after this life? What happens when we die? These are all questions which naturally come in the mind of an inquisitive person. In our ancient literature, the Srimad Bhagavatam, our commentator Srila Prabhupada, he says, when an intelligent person looks up at the stars at night, they can't help but think, where did it all come from? Unfortunately, in the world today, people stop questioning. You see? When we're young, we're always questioning. Why? Why, isn't it? Kids are always asking, why? But as we grow up, we tend to just begin accepting life. We tend to just then go along with the flow of what everyone else is doing. We set our goals for life based on what society tells us is the right thing, the proper thing, the thing that will really bring you happiness. But most of us maybe have never really questioned it. Today we were driving in and we drove on Abbey Road. Anyone know why Abbey Road is famous? It's famous for the Beatles, isn't it? And John Lennon, he was right there in the Beatles, and he once told a story that a teacher had asked all the students, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so all of them had drawn different pictures. You know, one had drawn a picture of a pilot, one had drawn a picture of a singer, maybe, singer over there. Someone had drawn a picture of a mechanic or different things. So they were all presenting their pictures, what I want to be when I grow up. And then one child came to the front, and their piece of paper simply had a round circle, 2 dots, and a smile. Yeah, just like that. And the teacher said, what is this? And the child said, you asked us to draw what we want to be when we grow up. So the teacher said, but what is this? The child said, I just want to be happy. And the teacher said, you didn't understand the assignment. And the child said, and you didn't understand life. It's interesting, we make so many goals for ourselves. But will those be the things which actually will bring us happiness? Krishna encourages Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita to step back and question. Once there was a group of friends and they arrived in New York. New York is the city that never sleeps. So they arrived in their hotel and they had the penthouse suite on the 100th floor. And so they checked into their hotel room. But you're in New York at 12 o'clock in midnight. That's just when life begins, you know. So they thought, okay, let's go out for a time out on the town. And so they went out to all the nightclubs, they went to the restaurants. They returned to the hotel at like 6 o'clock in the morning, thoroughly exhausted, having experienced so much of New York. And when they came into the hotel, there was something they saw which was like the last thing they wanted to see. And what was that? They walked up to the lift and it said, "Lift out of order." Now you may be in the penthouse suite of the Hilton on the 100th floor, but when the lift is not working, that's a problem. So they thought, oh my God, what do we do now? So the group of friends, they said, anyway, we have to bite the bullet, we have to start walking up the staircase. So they began walking up the staircase, they got to 10 to 20th floor. Then they said, this is going to take a long time, let's start telling each other stories. You know, keep each other entertained. So they started telling a story, they got to the 40th, someone else told some stories, they got to the 60th. They got to the 80th, they all ran out of stories, but there was one of them who hadn't said any story. So they looked at him and they said, why don't you tell a story? We're going to reach the 100th floor soon. Give us some entertainment. He said, I don't know, I have a story, but I don't know if you want to hear it. It's a tragic story. They said, no, don't worry. Any story is good at this stage. He said, the story is that we're on the 80th floor. We're going to reach the 100th floor soon, but we forgot the key at the reception. And perhaps that is the story of our life. That's the story maybe of the world, that people are rising. They're rising in their economic affluence. They're rising in technology. We're rising in so many facilities and conveniences and gadgets. Rising, rising, rising. But maybe we forgot the key to happiness. We forgot that maybe even if I achieve all of these things, it won't actually bring me the contentment I'm looking for. Nowadays in the world, there's so many books, isn't it, telling you about how to live the best life. The 7 habits of highly successful people. The monk who sold his Ferrari. The secret, isn't it? The law of attraction. The secret. Imagine you could attract anything you wanted in life. Even if that was true, would it still make you happy? Because even if you could attract anything you wanted in life, what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita is that the problem is that people are trying to attract the wrong things. People are attracting things, endeavoring for things, trying to obtain things that ultimately won't make us happy anyway. And therefore, the secret behind the secret is that you have to know what will actually make you happy, and then endeavor in life to achieve and attain those things. What Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita is that if you try to find happiness through material things, one of 4 things will happen. Scenario 1 is you look for happiness in material things, and you don't get those things, isn't it? You try to get that career, you try to earn that money, you try to establish a relationship with that person, but somehow it just doesn't happen, it just doesn't manifest. Frustration. Scenario 2, when you try to find happiness through material things, Krishna says is, you may get it, but it doesn't bring you the experience you thought it would bring you, isn't it? You thought it would be good, but it's kind of like chewing gum. You chew it for some time, there's a bit of a taste, but it doesn't really satisfy you. Frustration. Krishna says, The third scenario when you try to find happiness through material things is you get something, it's good, but then it disappears. It doesn't last, it doesn't endure, it doesn't continue. Last Christmas I gave you my heart, but the very next day you threw it away, isn't it? All these songs of, I found it, I thought I found love, and then it disappeared, and then it left, and then it all fell away. Frustration. And Krishna says the fourth scenario when you try to find happiness through material things is you may get it, it may be good, it may even last, but it will come along with many other things that you don't really want. Every type of happiness in the material realm is accompanied by some kind of duality, some kind of other negative thing that we didn't really want. Back in the day when they used to have cassettes, then there used to be a song on the A side, which was the song that you really wanted to hear. But then there would be a song on the B side that was kind of like just not your style. But can you just take the song on the A side and not the B side? No, it all comes as a package. And therefore Krishna says that along with every type of material happiness also comes material distress, material pain, discomfort. And therefore Krishna says in a beautiful verse, Yehisham sparsha jaboga dukkayonaya evate adyantavanta konteya nateshu ramate Buddha. This beautiful Sanskrit. Krishna says, if you try to find enjoyment by contact of the material senses with material things, dukkayonaya evate, know for sure that you're in for a big letdown. Adyantavanta, because every type of material happiness has an adi, a beginning, and an anta, an end. Nateshu ramate Buddha. And therefore if you're a Buddha, an intelligent person, an awakened person, then you'll begin to realize, why am I investing my hopes in all of these things? Because it never really brings me the contentment and fulfillment of heart that I really, really seek. And so, most people in the world are unhappy because they're trying to find happiness, but they're looking for it in the wrong place. And so the whole purpose of spirituality, the whole purpose of wisdom books like the Bhagavad Gita is to help us to reorientate our vision. The very first thing that Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yovanam jara tatha dehantara prapti dhirastatra namuyati. The very, very first piece of knowledge that Krishna gives to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita is Krishna says that the body, the deha means the body, this is simply a vehicle, this is simply a dress, this is simply a machine. And therefore, this is just an external, superficial covering. But who are we? We are spiritual beings, the soul inhabiting this body, animating it, driving it. And therefore, if we really want to find happiness, then we have to begin feeding the soul. We have to begin connecting on a deeper level with who we are. And as spiritual beings, we have a connection with the Supreme Spirit. And when we begin cultivating and awakening that relationship, then we begin to experience a different type of fulfillment that none of the material things in this world gave us. If you go into the petrol station and you're really hungry and you wind down the window and you tell the attendant, can you give me some food? And they keep pumping your car with petrol. You'll say, thanks for the fuel, but can you feed me? Because no matter how much fuel you put in the car, it won't satisfy your hunger. And therefore you find that the most rich, the famous, the people who have attained all material things that everyone else searches for are often the ones who are the most dissatisfied, the most unhappy. Because now, not only have they realized that these material things don't bring them happiness, they have nowhere else to go, nothing else to search for, because they have no other alternative. So this is life. Life, the purpose of life is to find happiness. And the way by which we can find happiness is by first understanding who we are. People don't know who they are. And therefore this is the very, very first step that a spiritualist takes. They take the time, they take the energy to actually deeply understand who they are. And so we all went on this journey. When I was 15 years old, I began reading the Bhagavad Gita. And by the time I was 21 years old, I realized that I have to explore this in a deeper way. Otherwise, I don't think my life is going to go in a very progressive direction. And so at the age of 21, I graduated from university, and I told my parents that I want to go on a journey. I want to go on a journey to India, and I want to spend time there learning, searching. I want to spend time there actually deeply understanding what is the meaning of life. And so that was a shock for my parents, naturally. But I knew I had to go on that journey. So for everyone in this room, if you want to go on the journey of spirituality, you have to be brave. You have to be courageous. You have to be ready to go against the grain of society. You have to be willing to question everything that the world told you was true. And sometimes it's a difficult journey because you feel like you can't relate to people in the same way. You can't relate to the world in the same way. And sometimes it's easier just to forget about it and just be a normal person in the world again. But those who are brave continue on that journey. And although it's difficult, they begin to discover the beauty of spirituality that awakens a much higher grade of happiness. And so that is the offer of the Bhagavad Gita. That is the offer of spiritual life. So before I continue saying more, rather than this just being a monologue of me speaking, I'm going to open it out to all of you and see whether you may have any questions or you may have anything you would like to ask based on any points that I've made so far. And then perhaps we can have a little bit of a discussion and it will be perhaps more relevant for you. Yes, I grew up in, obviously, my parents are from India, but I grew up in London, I grew up in Wembley. I had been visiting India from a young age, but it was more to visit family and so on and so forth. So when I went to India when I was 21, it was to go and try and discover spirituality. India is said to be the land of the sages, the land of spiritual wisdom, the place where you can go to and live in ashrams and enter into holy places where people function on a completely different set of values. And so I thought, let me go to that place and let me see what I may learn there. So India is a very, very beautiful place. There I learned many, many things. One thing I'd like to share with all of you, that sometimes in order to connect spiritually, what you sometimes have to do is disconnect from your material situation. See, what happens in life is we're surrounded by so much noise around us. The expectations of family, the expectations of friends, the expectations of society, the expectations of the prevailing culture of the day. And in all of that noise, we never really hear our own hearts. And therefore, going to India was an opportunity to disconnect myself from all of that noise and to really look deeper within my own heart and question, what do I want to achieve in my life? What do I want to do in my life? And so, it was a very amazing trip. And I continue to go to India today, and I continue to regularly disconnect. When I was traveling in India, I saw one kind of yogi type of person. Like, he was in a cave, he was meditating. I looked at him, I thought, this guy is the real deal. Like, he looks like he has some wisdom. So I went up to him and I asked him, can you give me some wisdom that will help me on my spiritual journey? And he told me something which I try to follow even today. He said, every year, disconnect for 1 month. Every week, disconnect for 1 day. And every day, disconnect for 1 hour. And then he looked at me and he said, disconnect to connect. And I was like, wow, that's a good point. I should try doing that. And so even today, I try to do that. I try to spend some time every day, some time every week, and some time in the year where I just move away from my normal situation so that I can build a more conscious future for myself. It's said that when Picasso would paint paintings, then he would paint, but then what he would do periodically is step away from the painting and look at the whole canvas. And then he would see, oh, that part needs work, or that part needs to be adjusted. And then he would go back in and start painting again. So I would recommend everyone to do that. Take some time away and really think deeply about what it is you want to achieve in your time here. Because time is ticking. And the ancient sages say, Ayusha kshana ekopi nalabhya svarnakoti bi nache nirarthakam niti kachaha nistatodhika. This very famous verse, it said, Ayusha kshana ekopi, 1 moment of time, nalabhya, you can't get it back. Svarnakoti bi, even if you have millions of gold coins. Therefore, our most important and our most valuable asset that we have is the time we have in this world. Because in that time, if you use it appropriately, you can uncover great spiritual truth that can lead you to eternal happiness. And so, going to India was for that purpose. Well, I didn't exactly give it up, but one thing that was very difficult when I took up my spiritual journey was the good relationship I had with my parents. It was like, I had such a good relationship with my parents, and then I came to this point where I needed to explore my spirituality. And naturally, your mother, your father, they want to see you married, they want to see you have a good job, they want to see grandchildren. And so when I decided that I would go in another direction, that was very, very difficult. It created a big strain in the relationship. But I realized that I had to go through that, I had to do that. I didn't want to later on look back and have regrets in my life. And so, although that was a very, very difficult thing, I had to do that in order to find what my purpose was. I have a good relationship with them now, and they're happy. So, all's well that ends well. So that was quite difficult. And what was really easy to give up? when I came to the Hare Krishna movement, they told me there were certain regulative principles like not eating meat, not gambling. These were quite easy for me, like I wasn't doing those things anyway. So there were many things which were part of spiritual culture which I guess I was already doing. So in many ways, living as a monk was very easy. When I entered the monastery, they said, there's no beds here. Everyone has to sleep on the floor. I was like, that's easy. I don't fit on any bed anyway. I'm so tall. So that was quite easy, So many things were easy. Many things were just seamless. Yeah. I guess here I am talking about monastic life, and I just want to add this footnote that it's not that you have to become a monk. It's not that you have to renounce everything. It's not that you have to turn away from the world. In fact, Krishna says to Arjuna the very opposite. He says, don't turn away from the world. Live in the world, function in the world, have a family, have a career, but orientate and connect it all in a spiritual way. So it's not that spiritualists don't own anything. It's that spiritualists aren't owned by anything. So by all means, you can live in the world, you can have your family, you can have a career, you can be successful, you can even have a really big house and lots of money, and it's not a problem at all. As long as you do two things. Number one, you don't invest your hopes for happiness in those things. And number two, you rather use those things for the purpose of serving others and for serving the world in a spiritual way. And if you utilize those things in that way, then they not only are not an obstacle to your spiritual journey, but they actually help you to connect spiritually as well. So yeah, just to add that footnote. It can mean something as simple as waking up very early in the morning and having a certain time in the day which you just spend in solitude. One thing we really recommend for everyone in their spiritual journey is don't waste the early morning hours of the day. They're the most valuable time of the day. And so if you have a time in the morning, 4 to 6, 5 to 7, 1 hour, 2 hours, which is just meant for spiritual meditation, spiritual study, spiritual connection, then that's a time when you can disconnect from the world. That's a time when you don't look at your phone. That's a time when you're not interacting with other people in the world. That's a time when you're just spending between you and God, between you and your internal life. So disconnection can mean doing something like that. Disconnection can also mean sometimes just spending a week or a month in a place away from your normal place where you can spend time in spiritual immersion, spend time away from all of the day-to-day duties that take up your time. So we go on retreats and we do things like that. So that can also be a way of disconnecting. So like that, we just try to find a different space of consciousness which allows us to think in a more creative way. Because while we're always surrounded by the same situation, it's not always possible to think in a different way, to challenge ourselves. So, yeah. Hope that helps. We have to live in this world. You have duties, you have responsibilities, you have a career, you have a family, you have social obligations, and how can you just disconnect from all of that? So the first thing is, no, don't disconnect from it. Maybe at some time in the year you can spend some time disconnecting from it, but then eventually you have to come back. What Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita is the concept of karma yoga. Karma means activities, and yoga means connection. So karma yoga means the art of how to live in this world and connect everything you're doing to your spiritual goal. In other words, a karma yogi, their career isn't just something that they do to earn a living in this world, but their career also becomes a contribution to their spiritual journey. For a karma yogi, it's not just that they're a mother or a father and that's just a duty they have towards their children in this world, and their spirituality is something they do on a Sunday. No, even bringing up their children is part of their spiritual connection. In other words, the idea of karma yoga is what you do is you connect all of your immediate activities and you conduct them in such a way that they actually contribute to your spiritual journey. So for example, you may work in the world. So you may say, how do I connect my work in the world to a spiritual cause? How do I spiritualize my work, my career? Well, the first thing is that you earn money from a career. So why not use some of that money for the purpose of spiritual upliftment in the world? Then you're connecting your job to a spiritual cause. From your job, you attain certain skills and abilities and an intelligence in a certain thing. Can you use those skills, that intelligence, to spiritually contribute to the world? Then your career becomes spiritualized. From your career and your work in the world, you attain a certain amount of influence, a certain amount of power. Can you use that power and influence to bring about spiritual change? Then your career becomes spiritualized. In other words, think about how to connect all of the immediate responsibilities that you have in a spiritual way. And then it's not that we have to compartmentalize my life. This is what I do to survive in the world, and this is what I'm doing to connect spiritually. No, everything is integrated. So don't just be a husband, be a spiritual husband. Don't just be a father, be a spiritual father. Don't just be a businessman, be a spiritual businessman. In other words, there's a way in which you can connect everything. That's the art of karma yoga. So here I am telling you, you don't have to disconnect from the world, you don't have to give it all up, you don't have to become a monk, so why am I sitting in front of you as a monk? I don't believe any of this stuff, I just speak it. No, I'm only joking, I do believe it. The first thing to understand is that each one of us are individuals. Each one of us have our own path. Einstein said everyone is a genius, but if you convince a fish that it has to climb a tree, it will live its whole life thinking it's a failure. Everyone is a unique person and everyone has their own unique journey. We all carry things from previous lives and we come into this world with a certain personality. So for most people, it makes more sense and it's more natural to live in the world, have a family, have a career, and practice spirituality in that way. For some people, they may come into this world with a certain personality that veers towards renunciation. So they may take up that as a career. But even when they take up renunciation, it's not that they distance themselves from the world. They still act in the world, they engage with the world, but for the purpose of giving spiritual knowledge. So everyone just has to find their path. It's not that renunciation is higher. It's not that if you live as a monk, somehow you're more spiritually accomplished than someone who has a family. The real measure of one's spiritual advancement is how much selfless love they have within their heart. Someone can be living in family life surrounded by material things, but if their heart is filled with selfless love, they're considered to be more elevated than someone who lives a life of renunciation yet harbors selfishness within their consciousness. And so, yeah, there may be some souls who take the path of renunciation. But renunciation is not the goal. Renunciation is just a way of living that may suit some people. But the purpose of it all is to develop the mood of selfless love. In this world, our interactions are tainted by always some agenda. Whenever we have a relationship with someone, there's always some expectation of something that we are feeling that we will receive in that relationship. And therefore, there's always a calculation and there's always a condition. And therefore, in that kind of relationship, the flow of love is not fully free-flowing because it's impeded by some expectation. So selfless love is only possible when we've fully connected with God. When you're fully connected with God, then you receive a certain inner satisfaction, an inner nourishment, an inner fulfillment. That means that when you interact with the people of this world, you're never looking to get something from someone, but rather you're able to selflessly serve them, selflessly love them without any expectation of what you'll get in return. But to the extent that we're not connected with the Supreme, there will be a certain amount of a vacuum within our heart. And then what we do in the relationships of this world is we relate to people trying to get something from them in order to fulfill the vacuum within our hearts. And therefore that's not selfless love. That's conditional love. And so selfless love can only come about through spiritual connection. And when we're spiritually connected, then we'll be able to relate to the people of this world with no agenda. And when we relate to the people of this world with no agenda, then we can actually forge the deepest relationships. Yeah, many people talk about the need for self-care, the need for self-compassion. And how does that fit into the idea of being selfless? If you're being selfless, does that mean you don't engage in self-care or self-compassion? See, it's like this. In the beginning, coming to the point of selflessness is not an overnight journey. Coming to the point of selflessness is a journey we go through over a period of time. And in that period of time that we're coming to the point of achieving actual selflessness, we have to take care, we have to engage in self-care and self-compassion. You have to spend time for your own spiritual connection. You have to spend time for your own spiritual nourishment. You have to spend time to balance your own mental and physical needs. Because you have not become transcendental to all of these things. You have not transcended these things yet. You're still living in a body, you're living in a mind, you're identifying with that. Therefore, you have to take care of it. But when you actually develop a very, very high grade of spiritual consciousness, then in selfless giving, you actually feel like you're receiving the most. When you have that level of spiritual accomplishment. But in the beginning, when we don't have that level of spiritual accomplishment, we may be giving, but we may be also feeling like I'm becoming depleted here. And therefore you need to engage in some kind of self-care and self-compassion. But eventually, as you become more and more connected with the divine, and as you elevate your consciousness higher and higher, then being selfless is actually the greatest contribution to yourself simultaneously. It's hard to imagine because we've not experienced that kind of selflessness. We've not experienced that kind of spiritual elevation. But sometimes we get glimpses of it. Have you noticed sometimes when you just give someone, like you cook for someone and you put your heart into it, and you cook for them and you serve them, and it's almost like after you've served them, you don't feel hungry anymore. Have you ever experienced that? Because there's a certain sense in which when you reach a high level of selflessness, you become so fulfilled in that spirit of selfless giving that it is your nourishment. But until we've reached that, we have to take care of our body and mind and be kind to ourselves as well. So as I was mentioning, the first, our real self is that we're the spirit self. We're the spirit soul. But then we also have a mind and we also have a physical body. So to engage in self-care means to take care of the soul, to take care of the mind and one's emotional needs, and to also take care of one's physical health. So physical health means be balanced in your habits of eating, sleeping, recreation. Take care to live the right lifestyle and develop the right habits. Taking care of one's emotional needs means to take time to have a break, to have positive relationships, to have exchange, and other such things that we do to take care of our mind. And then taking care of the soul means to engage time in meditation, in study, in connecting with the Supreme Divinity. So self-care means care on all three of these levels. You have to care for your body, you have to care for your mind, and you have to also care for the soul. Meditation basically means to fix one's consciousness on that which is beyond the material. So there are different types of meditation. One type of meditation is a type of inner visualization, for example. Another type of meditation can involve focusing on the breath and gradually disconnecting oneself from, kind of identification with the body. But of course, our teachers explain that in this day and age, the most powerful and easy and practical and effective type of meditation is mantra or sound. Meditating on divine sound vibration, and therefore we sing, we chant, we engage in reciting these mantras, because it's said through that sound vibration and through focusing on that vibration that one ultimately awakens their pure spiritual consciousness. For example, if I played one of your favorite songs from 15 years ago, as soon as you hear the song, what happens? All your memories come back, isn't it? Where you were, who you were, what was happening. Sound has an incredible power to awaken the innate consciousness within us. So it's said by meditating on spiritual sound, then one actually begins to reawaken an understanding of who they really are, where they really meant to be situated, and what their relationship with the divine is. So meditation means to focus, and in this day and age, because the mind is so flickering, the easiest type of meditation is to meditate on sound, mantra. The first thing is that wisdom helps us. Through the wisdom literatures, we understand we're more than the body, we're more than the mind. We understand there's more than this chapter of existence. We understand that there's another world beyond this world. And so the first thing that helps when someone is in a chronic health situation in which they almost feel imprisoned is it gives great hope to know that this is not the entirety of the story. In other words, there's something beyond this, there's something after this, there's something greater that I can attain outside of this situation that I'm in right now, which is very, very difficult. But when one doesn't have any vision of anything beyond this body, when one doesn't have any vision of anything beyond this life, then when they're stuck in a situation like the one you're mentioning, then there's no hope. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. There's no vision of anything greater. And therefore people do slide into depression, and people do slide into a sense of hopelessness. Therefore wisdom is very, very powerful, because wisdom is expanding our vision. One of the biggest problems in this world is that people don't have a vision beyond their immediate difficulties. And therefore they don't find the motivation to live, or they lose the hunger for life. So the first thing that helps is wisdom. The second thing that helps is the spiritual practice. Because when we engage in spiritual practice, then what happens is that slowly one can actually enter into a sacred space of consciousness which almost transcends the bodily pain of the mind and even the physical body. And therefore you find that very accomplished spiritualists, even though they may be in a body which is diseased, a body which is ill, a body which on a physical level is subjected to so much pain, because they found an inner space of sacred consciousness, there's pain but there's no suffering, because they've managed to elevate themselves beyond that. Now that is an accomplishment which takes time. That is an accomplishment which comes with spiritual practice. But that is an opportunity that one can elevate themselves beyond the pain of this world by upgrading their consciousness and connecting to that which is beyond this world. Well, I think in your question you've also given the answer that in that relationship there's always a third factor. There's a higher factor. And when two people come together to help each other on the journey, when two people come together to say we can serve each other to attain that higher goal, when two people come together to say I'm not coming to take something from you, but I'm coming to give to you so that you can reach your destination, then that relationship becomes very, very spiritual. Then that relationship becomes a relationship of selflessness, because you're serving each other to reach a higher goal. And so when you do introduce that third factor into a relationship, that's when the relationship transforms into a spiritual relationship. Yeah, there are many spiritual traditions in this world. You know, within the Vedic tradition, there are many, many schools of thought. And even outside the Vedic religion, there are different religions. Ultimately, the Bhagavatam mentions, the ancient scriptures mention in one verse, Save pumsham paro dharmo yato bhakti radoksaje ahaituki apratihata yenatma suprasidati. That spiritual process which helps you to move towards a type of love which is unmotivated and uninterrupted, that is the supreme religion. We're not going to sit here and say this religion is higher than this religion. The highest religion is the religion which helps you to awaken pure love. The highest religion is the religion which helps you to function in this world with the elimination of selfishness. The highest religion is the one which helps you to develop that purity of consciousness and that sincerity of heart. And so my simple answer to you would be, whichever spiritual tradition, whichever spiritual people, whatever spiritual practices help you to develop unmotivated, uninterrupted, pure love, why would you not take advantage of it? So if you feel that association with certain spiritual individuals are helping you, why would you not take advantage? Take advantage. It's no problem. But sometimes one thing I will say is that we have to be careful of being spiritual shoppers. And spiritual shoppers, what they do is they kind of go everywhere, they look at everything, but never really do anything seriously. That will only bring you limited spiritual progression. Just like you can put so many things into your mouth, but at some point you have to close your mouth and begin chewing. Otherwise there's no nourishment. And so while on one hand I would say yes, engage with a variety of spiritualists if you feel that is nourishing your path. The footnote I would add to that is also focus and do something seriously so that you can actually experience some tangible transformation and change. You see, the spiritual journey doesn't just go like this. It's not just a straight line up. The spiritual journey means there will be ups and downs. But the ups and downs, in those ups and downs, you're gradually going to a higher and higher level. So say, for example, next month you decide to disconnect for 2 weeks. And then you come back to your life again. Then it's not that when you come back to your life again, you're all of a sudden going to be like the consummate yogi, you know. But what will happen is that you'll still have downs. You'll still have days in which it doesn't quite go right. But overall, you will have lifted yourself up a little bit higher. And then you'll engage with the world, you'll have your ups and downs, and then you'll take another disconnection and you'll raise the game a little higher. And then you'll still have ups and downs, but those downs will be on a significantly higher level. And so, spiritual life is not just like going like in a simple line. There are always going to be ups and downs. There are always going to be good days and bad days. There are always going to be some successes and some failures. But overall, you'll be elevating yourself and moving higher. Yeah, consistency is so important. Sometimes people have a very romantic idea of spirituality. Oh, I'll close my eyes, I'll cross my legs, and then I'll meditate, and then within a few moments I'll be levitating and I'll be in another. No, it doesn't work like that. Meditation is hard work. Meditation takes discipline, perseverance, patience, and it's a daily activity. And some days you're meditating and you don't feel necessarily so spiritual at all. But that's okay. Those are sometimes the days when you make the most spiritual progress. Not the days when you're necessarily feeling, I'm connecting like anything. On the days which are hard, the days when you have to struggle, the days when your mind is going in 50 million places and you're trying to bring it under control, sometimes in those days you make a lot more progress than you may think. And so don't just think of meditation as an experience. Think of meditation as a discipline. And a discipline means a consistency, a commitment, and a daily application. Bruce Lee, he said, I don't fear the person who knows 1,000 kicks. I fear the person who knows one kick but has practiced it 1,000 times. Because there's a certain sense in which when you do one thing, but you just focus and you do it really well, you become so powerful through that. Should I tell you which one to do? You see, you have to, it's your journey. you have to seek, you have to explore, you have to find. Krishna, he speaks the whole Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. And then right at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, you know what he says to Arjuna? Iti te jnanam akyatam guyat guyataram maya vimrashe tadasheshena yatechasi tathakuru. After speaking the whole Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, Krishna says, I've revealed this knowledge to you. Think about it, reflect, contemplate on it, question it, challenge it, see if it makes sense. And then Krishna looks at Arjuna and he says, and then do what you want to do. There's no force, there's no coercion, there's no expectation from Krishna that this is what you have to do. You have to feel that motivation. You have to feel that conviction. You have to feel that, yes, this is the path I want to walk. And so what I would say is just, if you're a seeker, keep seeking and keep speaking with spiritual people, keep exploring, keep experimenting, keep trying. And surely with that sincerity of purpose, you will arrive at the place you're trying to find. We're all spiritual beings, and we're not meant to be here in the material world. If you look at the top ways in which people relax in this world, what do they do to relax? They go on holiday, people watch TV, they take intoxication, they go to sleep. These are the top ways in which people relax in the world. Do you notice a theme in every single one of these activities? They're all an escape. When you sleep, you forget about your normal life. When you go on holiday, you forget about your normal life. When you take intoxication, you forget about your normal life. When you watch a movie, you forget about your normal life. Why in the world is everyone trying to forget about their normal life? Because this is not life. This is not our home. This is not where we're meant to be. We're spiritual beings meant to be in a relationship of spiritual love, situated in the spirit world. And so the purpose of life is to realize that. The purpose of life is to connect with that reality. And the purpose of life is yoga, or connection to that ultimate spiritual destination, spiritual home. So that is the purpose of life, to understand who we are, to understand who we have an eternal relationship of love with, and then to spend our days here in this world forging that connection, so that by the end of this life we are spiritually connected beings, and then we can go on to experience another chapter of existence in the place that we're really meant to be. You see, in the Bhagavad Gita, terms are used interchangeably. Sometimes Krishna talks about karma yoga, and he's referring to karma yoga. Sometimes karma yoga can be interchangeable with bhakti yoga. Sometimes buddhi yoga can be synonymous with jnana yoga, and sometimes buddhi yoga can be synonymous with bhakti yoga. Is that confusing? Yes. Understand it like this. Bhakti means devotion. Karma means activity. And buddhi means the intelligence. So if someone is only engaging their activities, then that's just plain karma yoga. If someone is only utilizing their intelligence, then that's plain buddhi yoga. But when one utilizes their activities and their intelligence in a spirit of devotion, then it could be buddhi yoga, karma yoga, and bhakti yoga simultaneously. So sometimes when Srila Prabhupada talks about buddhi yoga, he's just referring to the philosophers. But sometimes when he's talking about Buddhi Yoga, he's talking about the Bhakti practitioners who are engaging in a relationship of love, but also engaging their intellect in that process of the offering of love. And therefore, in their bhakti, they're utilizing their buddhi as part of their offering. And therefore, Buddhi Yoga and Bhakti Yoga becomes synonymous. When we look at all the spiritual traditions of the world, and when we go beyond the ritualistic variations, when we go beyond the cultural or the traditional variations, when we get to the essence of every single spiritual or religious path, then ultimately we see that there are core universal principles that each one of them are talking about. And therefore there's a certain unity in the diversity of spirituality and religion that we see in the world today. Srila Prabhupada, when he traveled the world, he said, I'm not trying to turn people from one religious faith into another religious faith. He said, I'm not actually even teaching a religious faith, I'm teaching a spiritual science. The actual term for what we're teaching here is Sanatan Dharma, and Sanatan Dharma means the eternal occupation or the eternal function of the soul. And so in order to practice spirituality, it's not that you have to change your faith, it's not that you have to ascribe to an institution or label yourself or orientate yourself in a certain way. But really all you have to do is surround yourself with spiritualists who can uplift and enthuse and empower you, and then through their company engage in a spiritual practice which actually helps you to experience a transformation of your own consciousness. And so that's exactly what you're doing here today, and that's exactly why all of us are here. We're not here today to try to convert anyone to a particular type of religion. But what we're doing here today is creating a forum for each one of us to be together with spiritually sincere people so that we can learn techniques which can help us to experience genuine spiritual happiness and genuine spiritual consciousness.